Hello everyone, welcome to Unacademy. This is Astha, your educator, and I'm doing my post-graduation in English Literature from Ramadevy Women's University, Bhubaneswar. So this is an entirely new course that we are doing, and the lessons will be on Shaw, Hemingway and Yeats. They're the three eminent figures of different forms of literature. So I hope you like the course and the lessons. Keep following me on Unacademy. Thanks a lot.
George Bernard Shaw, the greatest British dramatist, next only to Shakespeare, was an Irishman. Born in Dublin on 26th July 1856, he was the youngest of the three children of George Card Shaw and Lucinda Elizabeth. While a child, Bernard Shaw discovered the drunkenness of his father and was so shocked that he never believed in anything from that time onwards. The father's drinking habits, the mother's disgust with her husband, and the impoverished condition of the family threw the three children very much upon their own resources. As a girl, Shaw's mother had felt greatly interested in music. She had an excellent musical voice and had been taking classes from a music teacher by the name John Lee, who had discovered a new method of teaching music. Finding her marriage a disastrous failure, Mrs. Shaw began to devote all her time to music under the guidance of Lee. In fact, Lee began to live in the same house with Shaw family. In this connection, a biographer humorously says that Bernard Shaw had really three parents, the third being the music teacher. But by becoming Lee's pupil and receiving music lessons from him, she not only found compensation for her unsatisfactory husband, but also laid the foundation of her son's career. Through music, Lee unconsciously provided an atmosphere from which Shaw absorbed music into his own system, thus becoming qualified subsequently to act as a music critic in London. By 1871, Shaw had memorized operas and orchestral masterpieces by some of the greatest musicians. Shaw had not received any systematic education. He had been taught by a governess at home when he was very young, and afterwards he attended 2 or 3 schools. Later in life, he said that he had learnt little from his school education, and there is no doubt that he has largely been self-taught. Fearing that to stay in Dublin would prevent him from attaining his literary ambitions, he wrote to his mother that he would be joining her in London. And so in March 1876, he left Dublin and joined her and his sister Lucy at Victorian Grove, Falham Road in London. His elder sister Agnes had died shortly before. In London, Shaw made up his mind to go further in his education. He had no intention of beginning regular work, but he did work for some time with the Edison Telephone Company. In the next few months, he got in touch with many and various kind of people. In 1881, he had a mild attack of smallpox also, but he gradually got to know many of the reforming spirits of the time, among them the businessman James Lecky, who was interested in phonetics, formed a great friendship with Shaw. Lecky took him to the Zettetical Society. Well, the Zettetical Society is a debating society formed to discuss freely about all objects, subjects, religious, philosophical and political stuffs. Well, Shaw started writing stories and other pieces quite early in his life and during the period 1879 and 1883. He produced as many as 5 novels, all of which were, however, rejected by the publishers to whom he submitted them. In the first 9 years of writing, Shaw earned £6. Day after day, he used to go to the reading room of the British Museum to further his education and to write. In this time, his mother was the one who supported him a lot. It was 1882 in the reading room of British Museum that Shaw first read Karl Marx, whose writings were too influenced him deeply. From that time onwards, Shaw began to hold socialistic views. In September 1884, he joined the Fabian Society. Fabian Society aimed at spreading and popularizing socialistic ideas by that time. So he joined the Fabian Society, whose members including H.G. Wells and Sidney Webb, the economist. Sidney Webb and his wife subsequently founded the London School of Economics and the New Statesman, which was a weekly magazine. Shaw now took every possible opportunity of speaking in public on political and social questions. This public speaking gave him immense confidence and perhaps influenced also the style of his plays. It was in the British Museum that Shaw met William Archer, the Scottish dramatic critic. He was also the first translator of the Ibsen's plays in English. Archer got Shaw some book reviewing work for the literary journal, and this was Shaw's first regular employment as a writer. Archer not only helped Shaw to gain a footing as a journalist, but also introduced him to the Ibsen plays and encouraged him to begin work on the play which he said they would write in collaboration. This play was The Widow's Houses, which however Shaw wrote alone, though the plot for it had been suggested by Archer. Before making a name for himself as a dramatist, Shaw spent several more years as a critic. At the end of 1894, Shaw became the dramatic critic of a weekly magazine called Saturday Review. By this time, Shaw had already written several plays, some of which includes Arms and the Man, which was also performed. But however, he did not yet make much money from these plays. Well, Shaw was now not only a dramatist, but also popular and an important social figure. He discovered that he had a special appeal for women. In fact, most of the women with whom he came in contact felt him to be irresistibly attractive. The consequence of this magnetic charm of his personality was that he became a regular philanderer. Well, philanderer is the one who flirts with all sorts of women. So yeah, he turned it to becoming a regular philanderer. In 1884, he became involved in 2 love affairs. In one case, the woman was a widow by the name Jenny Patterson, who was 15 years older to Shaw. Well, in this particular case, Shaw was not the seducer but the seduced. His second affair, or the second love affair during the same period, was with Mrs. Annie Besant, who was 9 years older to him. Annie Besant was the lady whom India still holds in great esteem because she was among the first in Britain to advocate the cause of independence for India from British control. Well, the affair of Annie Besant developed while she was still not divorced with her husband. But this was not only the 2 affairs that Shaw was known for. He has had many other affairs with variety of women in his life. Well, in 1896, Shaw met an Irish woman, Charlotte Townshend, at the house of Sidney and Beatrice Webb, and he finally made up his mind to marry this woman. It was really strange that Shaw, who enjoyed having love affairs, now for more than a decade, accepted the notion that marriage should be sexless. On that, he wrote, "I found sex hopeless as a basis for permanent relation and never dreamt of marriage in connection with it." And thus, the marriage was never consummated and that accounts also for the fact that the couple had no children. It was said to be an unnatural contract wedding of Shaw and Charlotte. Well, Shaw had completed his first play, Widows' Houses, in 1892. In 1893, he wrote a play called The Philanderer, which was followed in 1893 and 94 by Mrs. Warren's Profession. From now on, Shaw went on writing plays without interruption, proving himself to be a very prolific writer. Although he did not earn much popularity or income in the beginning, success came to him during the repertory session conducted at the Court Theatre. From that time onwards, the story of Shaw's life is the story of his plays. By 1707, he had written, besides the plays named that I have told earlier, much important plays that he came up with were Arms and the Man, Candida, The Devil's Disciple, Caesar and Cleopatra, Man and and The Doctor's Dilemma. Writing plays continued. In 1923, he wrote St. George. Soon in 1925, Shaw won the Nobel Prize for Literature. He spent the money, about £8,000, in establishing an Anglo-Swedish literary foundation, which began by sponsoring English translations of plays and especially Strindberg plays. He died peacefully on 2nd of November 1950 at the age of 95. He left behind an estate of value of learning and nearly £400,000, from which was to be financed an inquiry into the practical advantages of an enlarged English alphabet, providing a separate symbol for every vowel sound. Well, in accordance with his wish, his body was cremated, and soon his ashes were mixed with those of Charlotte in the grave. Well, Shaw was described as a Puritan, an Irish man, and also a progressive. Shaw was born rebel and revolutionary social reformer, and he wanted to build a new society, a new social order after completely demolishing the old ones. He was, of course, a genius too. He believed that the existing social institutes and conventions were unnatural and deceptive, and therefore they had to completely be changed. Shaw revolted against social and political institutions, false morality, unjust economic order, artificially imposed patriotism and nationalism, and every other evil that was going in the society. So lastly, I would say there's no doubt and no second thought on Shaw being the greatest figure in British drama after Shakespeare. I hope you liked the lesson. If you have any doubts, you can ask. You can just post it in the comment, and I hope you like it. Thanks a lot.